Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, February 11th, 2019.
Commissioners Garcia, Cabello, James, and Davis are present. We have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, beginning with the Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning. Brett McReynolds, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning. Sherman Torres, Bureau of Street Services. Richard Saragumba, Street Lighting.
Good morning. Khalil Garrios, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning. Michael Patney, Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning. Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Good morning. Raul Mendoza, Assistant Executive Officer. President James, we do not have any speaker cards under general public comment or the Neighborhood Council commentary. We do have three speaker cards on item number 2. And we've also received an electronic letter, which has been distributed on item number 2.
Okay, thank you. Then let's take care of some administrative items. Release of the stop payment notice for Robertson's. This is agenda item number 6. Robertson's is transmitting a release of a stop payment notice in the amount of $2,343.30 for furnishing ready-mix concrete, rock, and/or sand materials in connection with the emergency sewer and storm drain repair, 3801 West 60th Street project. The primary contractor for the project is Valverde Construction. Is there a second to my motion that we receive agenda item number 6 forthwith? By Commissioner Davis. Any objection? With that objection, we will do so. I see that the heater's working this morning. Agenda item number 7, release of a stop payment notice from Robertson's. Robertson's is transmitting the release of a stop payment notice in the amount of $5,858.25 for furnishing ready-mix concrete, rock, and/or sand materials in connection with the emergency sewer and storm drain repair project at 6918 Cedros Avenue. The primary contractor is Valverde Construction. Is there a second to my motion that we receive agenda item number 7 forthwith? By Commissioners Cabello and Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we will do so. We've got agenda item number 5, the release of a stop payment notice from Lead Electric Incorporated. They've transmitted the release in the amount of $703,501.63 for furnishing electrical instrumentation and materials in connection with the asphalt plant number 1 replacement and modernization project. The primary contractor for the project is Papich Construction Company Incorporated. Is there a second to my motion that we receive agenda item number 5 forthwith? By Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we will do so. Agenda item number 4 is an administrative item that's come back for signature. The mayor has approved and authorized the board on behalf of the Bureau of Sanitation to execute a memorandum of agreement with the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments and 18 public agencies regarding the administration and cost sharing of implementing the coordinated integrated monitoring plan and coordinating the related tasks associated with the enhanced watershed management program for the Upper Los Angeles River watershed management area. This is an item that's been through board already and is coming back for signature. Is there a second to my motion that we approve agenda item number 4 forthwith by Commissioner Cabello? Any objection? Without objection, we will do so. We have a special presentation this morning, certificates of recognition for the Mobile Pit Stop ambassadors. And are you doing that presentation, Mr. Mendoza? It's so good to see you this morning.
Oh, nice to be here.
We've got you on dual duty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for having us, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Executives, Mr. Jordan. So you're all familiar with our Mobile Pit Stop program, a program which we're doing to basically increase public access for bathrooms in the homeless community. So there's kind of two elements. A lot of the focus is on increasing public access and working with the homeless population. However, I think the part that doesn't get talked about a lot is the workforce development piece of it. So we're doing that service for the population, but we're also working with our contractor, 5 Keys and Hunters Point Family, where they really focus on re-entry, building a pipeline and a transitional workforce. A lot of the individuals that are employed on this program are formerly incarcerated, but they're working, they're getting job skills, training, and basically preparing them for a future career. You know, I think one thing, and Dave Bates, who manages the program from 5 Keys, talks about this, it shouldn't be a long-term job for a lot of these for these individuals, right? This is basically a stepping stone for them, prepares them for a future job. They get training in kind of the work that they're doing on this program, but after work, Mr. Bates also puts them through a transition class, and they meet once a week every Wednesday night or Thursday night, and they go through job skills, mock interviews, how to dress for interviews, just different things to kind of prepare them for that next step. So what I wanted to do today was to recognize some of those individuals. We'd really like to recognize everybody, but there's a couple that we wanted to kind of bring here today. I mean, a lot of the success of the program, and we talk about this a lot in the city with human infrastructure, investing in our people, right? Well, that's no more true for this program, because really the work that they do, or the success of the program, is based on the people who are doing the work. We had a group meeting, and the question was, what do you guys think your work entails? We talked about people throughout the word service, compassion, bringing safety. And so these individuals that we're recognizing today, I think, kind of represent some of that work that we're doing. So with your permission, if I could just give each of them, as we recognize them, maybe like 60 to 90 seconds to speak a little bit about their work and what this job has meant for them, I think it'd be...
Absolutely. They can take as much time as they would like. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza.
So I'm just going to step over there as we present these really quick.
Great, thank you.
So the first one is for Danny Lamas. In recognition of your exceptional community service by continually assisting the homeless population and providing appropriate resources. And then to Carl Weaver, in recognition of your hard work and dedication, efficiency, and organization, maintaining your mobile pit stop program site. And then there's another individual, I don't know if he's here today. Donald, is Donald? Donald couldn't make it here today, but I do want to point out, Donald's really taken kind of a leadership role in the program, not only being a part of it, but also kind of helping Mr. Bates with that transition class. He took part in it himself, and now he's kind of stuck around on his own time to just kind of be a support for others going through the program. So
Terrific.
I'll turn it over just minute or two.
How you ladies and gentlemen doing today?
Good morning, sir.
This is somewhere I thought I wouldn't be today, but I'm glad to be here. I don't know what to say, but thank you. You helped me a lot. The city did. It helped me a lot. Thank you guys very much. I'm nervous a little bit.
Don't be. Thank you, sir, for the work that you're doing for us. Thank you.
Yeah, first and foremost, good morning, and thank you guys so much for the award. I never thought I'd be able to do a job that I love and be awarded for it. This program means a lot to me. It's kind of put my life in a certain direction, never looking back towards that jail door, because without it, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I'd be headed, but now I got nothing but positive things going forward for me, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities for better jobs, better things for myself and my family, and it's done a lot. So thank you guys for supporting the program. Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to do this, and the public actually absolutely loves it. They tell us each and every day that they love what we're doing for them, and they take real good care of us. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Llamas. We appreciate it. Don't go anywhere for a moment, though. We'll start with Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Mr. Mendoza, I want to compliment you for highlighting this particular recognition today because, as all of us know, homelessness is a national problem throughout this country. We are not the only city in America that has to confront solutions and programs that will implement a safe place for people who happen to be homeless. You mentioned both of those young men who were honored today, that people in the public thank you so much, and I want you to know that those of us here on the Board of Public Works thank you equally, because we are really impressed with your ability to implement these programs to turn around the lives of individuals in our city. This is really, speaking of back to basics, this is as back to basics as you can get. And the fact that our city has taken the leadership to do what I believe is probably the toughest social problem we have in this city, to address the homeless situation, to appropriately refer them to places where they need to strengthen the things in their lives to help make them a sustainable citizen, is less than it's so rewarding to see you do it. I think is a better word for me to say. And again, I want to say that we are leading the country when we implement a solution to this problem. And it's so good for me to see a face of those individuals who are absolutely making it happen. And you two young men are absolutely making it happen. And we thank you on behalf of the Board of Public Works for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, thank you, President James. First and foremost, Raul, thank you for your leadership on putting this many factual parts and complex program together for the city, because it takes from that moment on to trickle down to making sure that we hire great people like you, Donald, who's not here, but David and Carl that are present here. I just want to say, I know you both said that you never thought that you would be here. It's really a life experience when you go somewhere where you never ever even experienced to be there. And I just want to say that that hard work that you're putting in there and that positive energy that now you have and the view in life that you now have is what got you here. And not just here, it's going to take you many other places, but just continuing what you're doing today. So on behalf of the City of LA, I thank you, your families, and everybody that's part of this program, because not only are you helping our community, our homeless community, like Dr. Davis said, on the basic level, but you're helping yourselves and you're helping your families, and that's really important for us too. So congratulations. I'm happy you're here, and I hope to see you much more times. Don't be surprised of all the great things that will happen to you, because that's really what it's all about. So congratulations to you both.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Cabello.
Thank you, President James, and Mr. Weaver, Mr. Llamas, thank you so much for your service. I think you cannot underestimate the characteristics that you have that got you here, the determination, the skill, the grit, the perseverance to make this choice, and we get to benefit from it. So we're happy to support you, but more than that, thank you for your help, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, and let me just close as well, gentlemen, by thanking you for your hard work and for your just great work in the community and making a difference in people's lives. This is, and I think Mr. Llamas, you mentioned this. This is a very popular program. I get emails about this fairly regularly. Some of them I forward right there to Mr. Mendoza because I do that because Mr. Mendoza, you've just been a terrific steward of this program. I've heard about it from other departments and other administrative offices in the building. You specifically have been pointed out to me as being a real driving force behind this incredible program. We've gotten, you gentlemen may have seen, there's a bit of press that's been written about this program as well. And to Commissioner Davis's point a moment ago, when that happens, and that's very beneficial and mutually beneficial for all of us, because then other cities and other communities start to see the great work that we're doing here, and if it works here, it can work other places. So you both are at the forefront of a critical program that's making a difference in people's lives, and public service just doesn't get any better than that. So we really appreciate the work that you're doing and for the time you've taken out of your day to come spend with us this morning. Congratulations. Keep it up, and we look forward to much more and more growth out of this program. And Raul, I know that you're not on the dais as receiving an award today, but congratulations and thank you to you as well. What I would like to do, though, is just take a brief recess from our agenda. Gentlemen, if we can just get a quick photo with the two of you and Mr. Mendoza, and I think there might be one or two other representatives from the program. If they want to join us, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Returning to our agenda, agenda item number 1 is a task order solicitation SN11, Franchise Information System Implementation and Integration, recommending that the board authorize the Director of Sanitation or his designee to issue amendment number 2 to toss SN11 to Tetra Tech Incorporated, increasing the budget from $3,500,000 to $5,073,000, and extend the term of engagement from March 9th, 2018 to July 22nd, 2019. That takes us through essentially, well, it's a little beyond this fiscal actually, and authorize the Director of Sanitation to extend the contract for an additional 2 years contingent upon approval by the board of renewal of the parent on-call contract as authorized by Council File 130949S1. Good morning, Mr. Tran.
Good morning, President James, fellow commissioners, and bureau execs. We are requesting the approval for amendment number 2, task order solicitation SN11 to Tetra Tech to continue to provide integration and implementation services for the franchise information system. We're requesting additional $1,573,000 to the initial contract, and 117 of that is for contingency purposes, and also extending the timeline to July 22nd, 2019, with option of 2-year extension if needed. We're asking for this additional cost because additional functionalities and business requirements and workflow processes to the system has been identified since the release of Recycla program. So there's been some scope changes, and just to help build some automation to the system, and for data collection and data analytics, we're asking for this additional funds. And also to keep on board Innovative Logics, who is a subcontractor to Tetra Tech, who has been working with us on the integration and implementation of the solution. So we don't want any delays or any issues by if we issue to a different company. So we would like to continue to work with them. This contract has had about 80% MBE participation with Innovative Logics, and we just like to continue to work and without reducing any further delays.
Understood, Mr. Tran. And I know we have a representative from Tetra Tech that's here. So we've been working with Tetra Tech and their sub-consultants for some time now, correct?
Correct.
And sanitation has been pleased with the work performance that they've received over this period of time.
Yes.
Okay. We are let me just tell you where I'm going.
Sure.
We're extending it to a period of time that we may have a parent contract that comes up for renewal in the window.
Right.
Okay? And so that may come up to board, of course.
Right.
And we're covering that amount of time so that there's no work stoppage, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. That's essentially what I wanted to just make clear for the oral record. Thank you. I probably made it less clear, but that was clear to me anyway. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, 2 things. First, in terms of operations, this basic task order will allow us to have more data.
Yes.
So that we can more efficiently and effectively manage our franchises who are doing work on our behalf.
Correct.
And what kinds of things will we be able to determine from this data that we've used in the past? What kinds of things are?
So some of the data we're collecting is to ensure that recycler service providers that are contracted with the city fulfill their contract terms. So we have inspectors that would go out and make sure that the recycler service providers will follow what they're issuing to the customers, and we have inspectors making sure that those service that they are saying they are providing are actually being provided, and the actual, what they say is needed for these different, the customers, that these bins are actually what they're needed. To kind of just make sure that they're in line with their contract agreements.
Now, where do the inspectors come from?
They're from sanitation.
So the Bureau of Sanitation
Right.
provides the inspectors. second issue is the diversity here that, or inclusion that we've been able to achieve. I wanted to recognize and compliment you in terms of our inclusion on this particular project. We have almost billions of dollars that we do every year, and often it's not always easy to achieve inclusion. So I wanted to compliment you on what we were able to achieve on this particular task order in terms of inclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Nothing else. Is that a motion, Commissioner Davis? I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Thank you, Mr. Tran.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We'll send number 1 forthwith. Is there a second to my motion that we approve the meeting minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, January 9th, 2019 by Commissioner Cabello? Any objection? Without objection, we will approve the meeting minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. I know I want to get to number 3 because number 2 is a hearing that's going to take a little bit of time. Agenda item number 3, contract amendment number 2, pre-qualified on-call civil engineering consulting services for the street improvement program, recommending that the board approve and forward the report with transmittals to the mayor and city council requesting the following. 1A, approve amendment number 2 to the contracts between the city and AECOM Technology Corporation, Cordoba Corporation, David Evans and Associates, EW Moon Incorporated, Harrison Associates, HDR Engineering, HNTB Corporation, Mars, that's MARRS Services, and Somas and Associates, those are the firms, to increase the total contract term from 10 years to 13 years, so obviously adding 3 years on. And secondly, authorize myself or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute amendment number 2. Mr. Mungra, you're here on number 3.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Ramnik Mangra. I'm with Bureau of Engineering Street Program. I'm project manager for Street Program. Due to this, staff availability, city's workload is more than the available staff. Therefore, BOE always has been relying on the pre-qualified on-call list for civil engineering consultant list for the staff augmentations, special training, or project delivery supports. On December 10th, the board approved a pre-qualified on-call list for 11 consultants to provide civil engineering services for street program on as-needed basis. The contract were executed on March 17, 2009 for 5 years. Of the 11 consultant contracts, original consultants, Rothman Engineering is no longer in operation. On March 12th, board approved amendment number 1 to the remaining 10 consultants, extending the term of the contract for another 5 years from March 17th or up to March 17, 2019. Jacob Engineering Group, which is formerly CH Tum Hill, does not have any active tasks right now, and they requested that they don't need to be on this contract amendment. So some of the facts I'm stating here is as of August 1st, 2018, that we have 20 active task orders issued under this PQSC civil engineering consultant list, and they are at various stages of completion. To complete the long-term projects, approval of amendment number 2 is requested to extend duration of the contract by 3 years. BOE is establishing a new PQSC civil engineering consultant contract list that is expected to be in place in May 2019. We may need to issue additional tasks until the new contract is in place. Additional task order after May 2019 will utilize the new list. Notice of intent to contract form for amendment number 2 was submitted to the office of CEO's Office of Administration, I'm sorry, on April 25th, 2018. Compliance with the City Charter 1022, CEO determined that it was more feasible to utilize consultant to perform this work rather than the city employees. This proposal amendment has been reviewed and approved by city attorney. There is no fiscal impact on general funds. Therefore, staff requests for the authority to execute amendment number 2 to 9 consultant contracts for PQSC Civil Engineering Consulting Services for Street Improvement Program. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Munger. Let me see if I can, again, paint the picture like I did on a previous item for the oral record that kind of summarizes what we're doing here. Kind of really from the briefing that I had, and I appreciate the briefing that you all brought to me. But so we have a number of pre-qualified on-call lists. We have this pre-qualified on-call list that has been in operation now for a number of years, most recently perhaps 2014.
That's correct.
And I know we had one or so that dropped off the list. So we have this list now, and we have a new list that's coming.
That's correct.
And of the new list that's coming, likely most of these are probably going to be on it.
Yes.
We might get a couple of additionals. But we also have a number of active task orders. The board report references 20 of them. And the work needs to continue.
That's correct.
Okay, so again, we're kind of bridging this period of time from the existing pre-qualified on-call contractor list to the new one.
That's the purpose of this amendment, to
Okay.
extend the time, to bridge
Got
the
it.
gap.
But once those task orders wrap up, any new task order will go to the new list.
Yes.
Once the new list is in place.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Any questions? All right, thank you. Then I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 3 forthwith? We will send number 3 forthwith. Agenda item number 2. Before we call number 2, give me just 1 second. I've got a couple of things that have been submitted this morning on number 2 that I haven't read yet, even though I know the exhibit I got before this morning, but give me just a second, and then we'll start on number 2. Let's recess for just a couple of minutes. Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and call number 2. Agenda item number 2, joint report, Council Districts 8 and 10, contract award Arlington Avenue Sewer Rehabilitation, Jefferson Boulevard to Rodeo Road, recommending that the board first find transmittal numbers 2 and 4 to be unmerited as discussed in the report. Secondly, declare JR Pipeline the first low bidder to be the lowest responsible bidder, and award JR Pipeline a contract for the project for $6,872,918. Secondly, authorize myself or 2 members of the board to execute the contract after approval as to form has been obtained from the city attorney. And this was continued really just one time, although we had a kind of a placeholder to make sure that bid bonds were extended, Ms. Thomas. And as I recall, we didn't really get into the substance of the item, so let's start really anew today.
Yes.
With agenda item number 2. So we'll start with with Mary Thomas, and then we will have the protest and then the response from from the proposed low bidder. So go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Mary Thomas from Bureau of Engineering, Wastewater Conveyance Engineering Division, requesting the Board of Public Works to award the Arlington Sewer Rehabilitation Project to JR Pipeline for the amount of $6,872,918. The scope of this project is to rehabilitate approximately 2,300 feet of 42-inch and 466 feet of 33-inch brick concrete sewer by slip lining and 2,640 feet of 30-inch vitrified concrete pipe sewer by cured in-place lining, referred to as CIPP. Scope also include construction of 1,500 feet of new 10-inch sewer, rehabilitation of existing maintenance holes and junction structures. The contract duration is 600 days, and the project is in council districts 8 and 10. We received 5 bids on this project on November 7, 2018. The city engineer's estimate for this project is $7,236,829. The lowest bidder is JR Pipeline, whose bid came in 5% below the city engineer's estimate at $6,872,918. A protest was filed on this project by Steve Bobolo Construction Company, the second low bidder. There are 5 transmittals attached to the board report. 4 of them are the protest letters from Steve Bobolo and the rebuttals from JR Pipeline. Another protest letter also came in on February 5th, which is not part of the board report. As part of the contract documents, the contractors were required to submit a liner installer minimum qualification form. JR did submit this form and listed Santa Margarita Plumbing as their subcontractor. In our assessment, JR and Santa Margarita Pipe meet the minimum experience required for this project. JR has pledged 0.76 MBE, 4% SBE and EBE, 22.06% OBE, and 0% for WBE and DVBE. The mandatory subcontract minimum for this project is 25%, and contractor has pledged 30.34%. Therefore, staff recommendation is to award this project to JR Pipeline, the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay, the board report references the protest. So, Ms. Thomas, I may ask you to come back after we hear from the protest before we hear from the response from JR Pipeline as well. Thank you, ma'am. Any questions just on Commissioner Davis?
You stated for us what the inclusion pledge amount was for one of the primes, but not the protester. Could you?
No, only for the JR.
You gave me the data for JR?
JR's, yes.
Okay, could you give me the data for Steve Bubalo? Do you have that?
I
permissible?
don't have that
listed. Is that permissible or not really?
If we have it, I have no problem with it out there, but
The nature of the protest from, well, certainly the data exists, but the protest that Steve Biblo Construction Company has raised goes to the responsiveness of JR Pipeline, as will be explained. The subcontractor utilization levels for Steve Biblo aren't really germane to that issue, but if you want it, the staff could get it, but it's not part of the report, and it would not typically be part of a board report like this.
Just curious, when they come before us, I just want to comprehensively be able to look at everything, and I do focus specifically on the complaint and realize it's not directly related at all. But just because we have read it for one, I want to see what it was for the other as well. And so for me, even though it's not specifically related in terms of the complaint presenting, the fact that that data became available for one, for me, in terms of evaluation, it's important for me to hear it. Even though I'm not going to make it a determining factor, I'm just curious about the data for both.
I apologize, I don't have that information right now.
Okay, not a problem.
thank you. Okay, so no other questions, Commissioner Davis, on that?
Not as it relates to that.
Okay. Then, Mr. Westhoff, you have As you know, you've been before us a number of times. I don't put a time limit on the real parties in interest. You're the protester. But I do just ask for common courtesy that once any one side starts to repeat themselves, then I'm going to figure that you're done because we've already heard it the first time. So
If I start to repeat myself, it's because of old age, not because of
fair enough. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, Mr. Executive Officer, and Mr. City Attorney. My name is Christopher Westhoff. I have been retained by Steve Bubalo Construction Company to represent them in this particular matter. And for the sake of full disclosure, as the President knows, I spent 27 years of my career at the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office doing the job that Mr. Jordan now does for it. So I am pretty well versed in how the bidding process works. It was very interesting to see that the on-call lists are still alive and well because I was actually the lawyer that helped create all of those on-call lists and the whole process that we now use to accelerate some of the repairs that we need to do for sewers. The public bidding process in Los Angeles is steeped in lots and lots of tradition, going all the way back to why this board in 1906 was created as a full-time citizen board. You sit in a very, very unique position. There is no other full-time board in the entire city that awards contracts, and I am not aware of anyone else in the United States. So it's really an important process that the people who developed our charter back in 1906 thought that the award and the application and the fairness of our bidding rules need to be applied equally across the board, and there need to be no conflicts with commissioners who are awarding those contracts. There tend to be two types of issues when you're talking about a bid protest. There's the one that are black and white that are not subject to any kind of interpretation. And the easiest one and the first one that I ever got to learn to do was a bid bond. All of our bidders have to, meaning city bidders, all bidders have to present bid bonds to the city. And city attorney is sometimes called upon to make a call on whether that bid bond is a good bid bond or a bad bid bond. The city charter required forfeiture bonds. And you could have a low bidder come into this board, be $10 million below the next low bidder, but if that bidder did not present a forfeiture bond, this board would have no other choice but to declare that bid to be non-responsive because it didn't meet the requirement. On the other end, you had the MSM discussed by the Bureau representative earlier, and believe it or not, I actually was the person who came up with that terminology, mandatory subcontracting minimum, and it's when we redid the city's minority and women business program, we added that in as a component to try and require it. When we first put that in, that was a mandatory requirement. If it was 25% and you had 24%, you were non-responsive. Then state law came into play. We had a case, Galati Brothers, which I'm sure you have heard of, which actually gives this board and all awarding authorities in the state of California some flexibility, some discretion when you have a numeric number. And so now you can exercise your discretion under Galati Brothers where you have a number, 25, and it goes down to 23. You can waive that. That's because state law has opined on it. The situation we have in front of us today, in my belief, fits more into the first, where it's a mandatory situation. I sent a form in that was submitted with JR's bid, and it's a form that is probably, I assume, used in pretty much every liner job that the city is putting out, period. I mean, it's a qualification form. It's sort of your ticket into the event. You have to have a minimum amount of experience in order to be able to rehabilitate a sewer in the city of Los Angeles. As the Bureau representative said, there's two types of liners that are going to be used in this particular job. There's some new construction that's going to go on, but the two liner jobs were what is called reinforced pipe, and then you have the CIPP, the cured in place pipe. The reinforced pipe is a rigid pipe where you are taking and you're going to dig a pit, You're going to insert a length of that pipe and you're going to jack it in, and it's fiberglass reinforced pipe. It's a very different animal than the CIPP, and it's used in very large pipes. It's used when, and you heard the numbers, I believe it was 42-inch and 60-inch. So you'll use the rigid pipe to line sewers that are crumbling or falling apart or need rehabilitation with it. Hobus is a manufacturer. Those manufacturers do not require certification of their installers. And that comes into play when we look at the form that is really at the heart of the issue that we're talking about today. The other type of rehabilitation is CIPP, cured in place. And it literally started when I was sitting here. Before that, we didn't have it. You used to dig up a sewer, replace the sewer, and that was it. You didn't have liner options. But because materials have changed, they now have this ability to take a flexible plastic pipe, drag it through a sewer so that you don't have to dig up your street. You then can insert either hot water, which is heat cured, or UV, that's right, ultraviolet rays. You can put a machine through it, and what that does is it puts the plastic pipe up against your existing pipe that you're fixing, and it literally creates a liner for that pipe, and it becomes rigid. It adheres to the outside pipe, and it renews that pipe, and it has saved this city and pretty much any city that has used it hundreds and billions of dollars worth, because it renews that pipe for many, many years going forward, because you now have a conduit to take that wastewater where you want it to go, hopefully to your treatment plant. They're very different. There is no certification for fiberglass reinforced. There is certification for CIPP. So now let's go to the city's form. The city had 100% control over this form. It wrote it. It literally could write it in any way it wished, as long as it didn't violate any other tenet of public bidding law. So if you go to the top of the form, the first box in this form says, failure to meet the minimum qualifications of the liner installer, or failure to submit this form by the bid due date will result in the bid being deemed non-responsive. And that's when I say it's not permissive language, it's mandatory language. And that's the situation that we're in today. If it were, the city could have written this form and used permissive language. It could have said might, may, potentially. It didn't. It said it will result in your bid being deemed non-responsive. All of the contractors who bid this particular job are qualified to do the work. Nobody's questioning that. But we have the rules in place so that all of the bidders know what their responsibility is when they submit their response to the request for bids by the city. If you go to that same box, it says, the intent of this form is to evaluate if the bidder or its liner installer contractor meets the minimum qualifications to rehabilitate sewers in the city of Los Angeles. All statements made on this form are subject to verification. So if you put something down, the city's going to go check it. And that makes perfect sense. The next line is important because this is where the city asks for minimum qualifications and experience. And I'll come back to this on another form for another job, because I think it really is germane to what was the intent of the city when it issued this particular
If you're going to bring up another job from another project, you're going to stretch me on whether or not it relates to this and the agenda item that we're in front of.
It's just two words on that form, and it's just how this form changed for the next job or a job subsequent to this. This particular form requires on this job that the bidders have demonstrate 25,000 linear feet of installation for the particular product that they have bid to the city as the product that they will be using for that part of the project. Not the fiberglass reinforced, but the CIPP. 25,000 linear feet sounds like a lot, but when you understand that we have 7,500 miles of sewer, 25,000 linear feet of experience isn't really all that much. And we have been doing rehabilitation in sewers for the last 3 decades. The next box is proposed City of Los Angeles approved product for installation in this project. So you have to tell the city, I'm going to use in situ form, I'm going to use, Berkeliner, I'm going to use whatever pipe that has already gone through the city's approval process. So that you had to put that one in there. Number, and here's the next box, and this is critical, number of linear feet installed and completed to the satisfaction and acceptance of the owner agency using the proposed product. So if I'm going to put Berkeliner in, as JR did, or in situ form, as Steve Bubalo did, then I have to demonstrate that I did 25,000 linear feet of that particular product. And here's another reason that I believe this form applies only to CIPP and not to the fiberglass pipe is provide proof of certification as an installer of City of Los Angeles approved product. So what JR did is, in their form, they put 8,168 feet, linear feet, on the Normandy sewer replacement rehabilitation. It's on their form. And they attached the certification from Berkeliner for their ability to install. So, if you look at Steve Bubalo's, it lists over 25,000 linear feet of in situ form, and they're certified to install in situ form. If you look at the other submittals by the other bidders, I know that Malad Bundich was one of the higher bidders. They submitted well over 25,000 linear feet, as did one of the other bidders. So the only bidder who did not submit the appropriate number of linear feet for this particular project that was requested by the city was JR Pipeline. You could argue, as I believe they have, that there is a latent ambiguity in this particular form because it doesn't just call out CIPP. So could they have submitted the fiberglass reinforced pipe? Well, I would venture to say that I don't believe so, and the reason I don't believe so is there's no certification for installation of fiberglass reinforced pipe. There's only certification for CIPP. So it is my belief that at the time that the city initiated this particular bid request, this particular form was meant to only apply to CIPP and not FRP. JR has argued that, oh no, we have FRP experience, and therefore we're going to utilize that to meet, in addition to our 8,000 feet that we submitted, we'll use the FRP experience as a mechanism to meet the 25,000 linear feet. Okay? Could be an argument because the minimum qualification and experience doesn't call out CIPP. Okay, maybe, and I'm only going to give it a maybe. However, if you look at their form, they did not list the experience for FRP for their subcontractor. And if you look at the other form that was submitted, which is the list of their subcontractors, if you go to Santa Margarita, which is apparently how they are, and again, I want us to go back to when the bids were submitted here, not what everybody decided after the fact they meant by it. If you look at that bid sheet, and I submitted it to the president, it lists Santa Margarita, and right next to it, it doesn't say installer, it says equipment. There's nothing on their bid sheet that indicates that Santa Margarita is a subcontractor that is going to install their pipe. So taking all of that together, in my mind, it's pretty clear that the sheet should apply to CIPP, but even if you accept that the FRP could potentially qualify as the experience for the contractor or its subcontractor, it's not listed on JR's form. They submitted it some 20 days after the bid. And then I just go right back up to that first line on this sheet, which says they must be submitted by the bid date, and if it's not submitted by the bid date, it will result in the bid being deemed non-responsive. Look, I totally understand when you have a low bidder, when I sat there and the commissioners, we're always struggling with trying to get to the low bidder. But the bid requirements that we put out on the street apply even when it's inconvenient for the city, even when it's inconvenient for the contractors. Sometimes it cuts in the city's favor, sometimes it cuts in the contractor's favor. In this particular instance, I realize there's an $800,000 difference between the low bidder and the next low bidder. And I realize that that can be a difficult call sometimes from this board when you're dealing with public dollars. I had to, I was involved in hundreds and hundreds of those calls. And all I'm saying is that to, after the fact, try and bootstrap their way into meeting the requirements that are specifically required by a city sheet here, not by any law, not by any statute, but that the city had 100% control of how this requirement was written, that to now bootstrap their way into it and say something that we submitted 20 days after that would now meet the minimum requirement, I think is stretching it beyond, credibility. The board always has the absolute right, and it's always the get out of jail free card. You can always reject all bids, and if the money is the key factor in this, then that should be what the board does. But to allow JR to come in after the fact and bootstrap their way into the argument that their FRP qualified them as the liner company on this particular project and as their experience, I think really stretches the credibility if you look at the documents and if you look at what the city mandated that each bidder received, and if you look at what all of the other bidders did, it pretty much demonstrates that CIPP was the type of pipe that they were looking for because of the certification.
Thank you, Mr. Westhoff.
Thank you. And
Commissioner Davis, do you have a question now, or can we go to the next? Up to you. Go ahead. Okay.
Engineering, not him.
Okay, can we go to the next?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Westhoff. I want to give JR Pipeline an opportunity as well before we hear back from engineering. So I've got Andrew, it looks like M-U-Z-I?
Yes, Mr. President, Andrew Muzi.
Okay, and I've got Matthew, it looks like something starts with an S?
Siphon.
Good morning, Mr.
Siphon? Okay, so same admonition as you heard from Mr. Westhoff. The only thing I would prefer, we only have one microphone, so if you guys speak one at a time.
Yeah, primarily me.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. President, Vice President, Commissioners, Dr. Davis. I'm here, my name is Andrew Muzi, and representing JR Pipeline. JR Pipeline is here, and is Juan Renteria, the president, Susan Hott, vice president, Vince Hott, Lance Stracer, project officer, and also the representatives from SMP, Santa Margarita Pipeline, Randy Gardner, and his two twin sons, Austin and Derek, who are the UV liner CCIP specialists. We want to thank you to start out for the work that the board has already put in reaching the recommendation in the joint report to award this job to JR Pipeline. And I thank the the Bureau of Engineering and the Bureau of Contract Compliance and others, because going through the joint report, it's unquestionable that there's a lot of work that goes into getting to this point of an award. And so we thank all of you who have participated in that. In this project and award, I'm proud to represent JR Pipeline, who has, in addition to being an $800,000 low, they are a certified minority small local business for the city of Los Angeles. They are an SBE, an MBE, and an LBE. And so I wanted to point that out as the difference, in addition to the bidding difference and the amounts. Mr. Westhoff obviously has a lot of experience and has been on this board and is familiar with many of you individuals. The form that he argues off of, the minimum liner installers minimum qualifications. There's a few things on that form. One of the big ones is that it's looking for the liner's minimum qualifications. And there's no question, Jarrah Pipeline, who I've personally known the company for at least 20 years, that they have been in business for 35 years, that they have definitely have tens and tens of thousands of lining experience for the city of LA, and I don't think I need to repeat that based on their history with the city. This bid sheet that Mr. Westhoff argues off of, what's important about the sheet is that it does say that the minimum qualifications are subject to verification. That's where the city gets involved after the bids. They look at the bids, they look at the experience requirements, and then they dig into it. And they find out, is this a qualified contractor that's going to do right by the city? Is the city going to have a business partner in this project or not? And we strongly believe that we meet the minimum qualifications based on all our prior experience. And what happened, when you read this form, Mr. Westhoff tries to say that it says something that it doesn't. It doesn't state that all contractors must have UV CCIP 25,000 minimum feet experience. The form does not say that. He tried to call it a latent ambiguity, but it's like he tried to say that the city's form for minimum qualifications contains a latent ambiguity, which is a legal term that's really, it's not really applicable here because we don't think it's ambiguous. What this form is, it's a general form for expressing the qualifications to where the city's going to look at the qualifications of the contractor and see if they meet the minimum qualifications that they require. There's nothing ambiguous about it. The bottom line is, with Mr. Westhoff's argument, it just doesn't say what he says it does say. It doesn't have the strict, specific requirements that he's trying to argue to the board that it says as a basis for his protest. It simply does not say that. It calls out for qualifications that we do have. Now, on this project, the Arlington project that we're seeking an award, that there is 2766 feet of the FRP slip liner, which, like we'd mentioned before, tens and tens of thousands of lineal feet Jarrah Pipeline is installed. The other is 2634 of the UV liner, which we do have the experience in. And we had listed the Normandy project, and it's important to talk just a bit about that. On the Normandy project, that project called for 8,000 lineal feet of UV liner, the same exact liner that we're talking about for the award in this job, except this job is 2,634 lineal feet of liner. And in that project, which is in the report, the award was in April 2016, completed March 2018 with zero problems, zero issues with the completion of the job by Jarrah Pipeline with the city. It was a very successful project of 8,000 lineal feet of UV liner. And at that time, that Normandy project, that was the largest UV liner project ever put out for bid by the city of LA. And that was, like I'd mentioned, it was successfully completed, which, like I said, it goes back to the liner minimum, liner installers minimum qualifications, where that would be a subject to verification. And that's a pretty strong verification of affirmation that Jarrah Pipeline and their subcontractor, Santa Margarita Pipeline, has. Another interesting part from the joint venture is, well, let's look at Santa Margarita Pipeline, because they are the ones that are listed and listed on the sheet of the subcontractors with reference to the exact line item of bid number, I believe it's 24 and 25 from our bid, that they are going to assist on. And when the city went back and verified their experience, they came up with an affirmation of they have 29,000 lineal feet of experience in this UV liner. So combined with their experience, added to the Normandy project of 8,000 lineal feet of UV liner that we did complete, we believe that it's overwhelming in favor that JR Pipeline does have the qualifications. One other point that was not in the joint report that I wanted to bring up is on the City of Los Angeles's website, and it takes about 3 different clicks to get through it. But when you go to the CCIP pipe that we're going to be installing under this job, there's a listing, and you click the PDF, and it gets you to a second part of the certified current approved installers. So then if you click that, it gives you another sheet, which I brought and I have copies I've highlighted, approved installers of BRK Berolina UV CCIP products. There are 2 companies on this list on the city's website. It's JR Pipeline and Santa Margarita Pipeline. And I've got some copies of these. And so if I could hand those.
Yes, from the city's website. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
I tried to make it, I like highlighted the important parts because it's a little bit, it's hard because you got to do a couple of clicks and one of the documents is a Word document. So I just printed them straight off so it'd be clear.
Well, we're still working on in IT on making the city's various websites more workable.
So, Mr. President, our executive officer, I think, is going to make some copies of that. Is that correct? And then he will make a copy for Steve Bubalow's representatives as well.
Yeah, we have extra copies, but we will hand them, Mr.
Oh,
Jordan.
okay, okay. Oh, okay. Never mind. But I think, yeah, do you all have copies then?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
There you go, Mike. Well, here, you laid it right there. Yeah, there's your copy. Go ahead, sir.
So, in concluding, the Bubalo arguments simply do not hold water because the minimum qualifications form does not say what they says it says, and also it is a general requirements form that's subject to verification by the city engineers, which they have done. Certainly, by completing the 8,000 lineal feet on the UV liner on the Normandy project, that shows that the city is in good hands with JR Pipeline in completing this 2634 lineal feet of UV liner on this project. And of course, as mentioned, we are $800,000 lower, and being an SBE, MBE, LBE, we again thank you for your time and consideration regarding this award.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, do you have questions for this gentleman?
Sure. I want to summarize your testimony here. Mr. Westfall, we understand him to say that the liner minimum qualifications were not met by your contracting firm, right? Is that what we understood Mr. Westfall to say in his testimony prior to you?
Yes, he said it after he gave an interpretation of what the form says that we don't believe it does say.
Okay.
That's
so
his
he
opinion.
said that the form said shall or must. Is that right? Westoff, I'm sorry. Mr. Westoff. But he said that in his testimony that our form said shall or must. Was that what, I think that's what I understood him to say.
No, unfortunately, that's where he gets off track because the form says the 25,000 lineal feet is of the approved product or equal liner. It's a general requirement of experience. And obviously, we do have the liner experience of way more than 25,000 square feet with the slip liner. And based upon UV CCIP being somewhat of a new product to the city of LA, like I'd mentioned, that
sure.
They've only had the other project, the 8,000 feet, lineal feet. So that's why perhaps it's not ambiguous, it's general because we're dealing with kind of a new product here.
Sure. Would it be fair to say, as I talk to you about your very own testimony, that his failure to emphasize or equal certainly gave us the different impression of what our form does say?
Pardon me?
Would it be fair to say Mr. Westoff's failure to emphasize the point on our form that indicates or equal, his failure to emphasize that gives us a different perspective in terms of what the form actually says? Because he said basically we didn't meet the linear minimal qualifications, and that the form insinuated shall or must, if you will, to some degree, and did not mention equal, which gave us another option by which to evaluate. Is that pretty accurate?
That's
in terms
accurate.
of how?
And with the form also saying it's subject to verification, which, I mean, they can verify, yes, but that's accurate.
Verification by our inspector? Verification?
By the Bureau of Engineering regarding the qualifications of the liner installer.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Any other questions for Mr. Musi? Thank you, sir. I trust you all won't go too far. Ms. Thomas? So, I know it's in the board report, but you've now heard from both sides, and I know that you've received communications from both sides as well. I think that the record should provide the response, the position of the Bureaus of Engineering and Contract Administration. Ms. Thomas, if you can provide that for us, for the oral record.
Do you want me to summarize their protest?
No, I want you to summarize the Bureau's position.
Yes.
And I know that there's a staff response in the board report.
Yes, yes.
But since the staff response, there have been a couple of additional things that have come up, and those are clarification questions I'm going to get to in a minute.
Yes.
But I kind of wanted to lay the foundation for those questions with your statement on where the Bureau stands.
Yes. JR Pipeline has been in business with City of Los Angeles since 2005. We understand that in this particular form, he has listed only 8,168 feet. However, this form also states that the intent of the form is to evaluate if the bidder or its liner installer / subcontractor. So we believe, Bureau of Engineering believes that between JR Pipeline and his subcontractor, Santa Margarita Pumping, they do qualify of that 25,000 feet minimum. So Bureau of Engineering is comfortable with the JR Pipeline as our contractor for this project.
Okay. And it's the Bureau of Engineering's position, and I'm assuming that BCA and BOE are together on this.
Yes.
Which I've got confirmation of. Yes. We have a representative from BCA here, right? Don't we?
No.
We don't?
No.
Well, we don't have any indication. Mr. McReynolds, any indication that there's any issue between BCA?
Yeah, this is Brett McReynolds, and I gave Linda's comments to BOE, but no, we're in lockstep with BOE.
You have Ms. McGlinchey's comment. Would you summarize Ms. McGlinchey's comments from Contract Administration?
You could put it best in context with the project.
Yes, please.
It has nothing to, what her response is, it
Well,
has nothing.
actually, I wanted Mr. McReynolds to do it, Ms. Thomas, just because he's from BCA.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking for it.
And Mr. President, while they're looking for that, I do note, just for your record, that the report is a joint report from the
I see
Bureau,
it.
but, okay.
Got it, yeah. So's the agenda item. But there's a method to my madness here. Okay.
I can't seem to find it here.
Go ahead, Mr.
I can go off of memory from
Go ahead.
having read the comments, and Ms. McGlinchey agrees with BOE's recommendation in general terms, and in particular, there you go, and in particular, JR has met all of the business inclusion requirements of the contract, and the subcontracting levels, although they're low, the contractor meets the minimum outreach requirements in itself, and the contractor in itself is an MBE, SBE, and LBE certified firm. So the protest is not related to business inclusion.
Correct.
So therefore, as far as contract administration is concerned, they have met the business inclusion requirements.
So here's here's kind of my question. I don't think that there's necessarily an issue here, to me, on whether or not JR Pipeline is qualified to do this work. I mean, just getting to the 8,100 linear feet that was in the project that's listed here in the Normandy Sewer Project, and this one's calling for 2,600 linear feet. I got it. The question is more, was JR Pipeline's description of their experience and that of their subcontractor, to the extent that's relevant, of course, was it sufficient for contract administration and engineering to make the joint recommendation that they did?
Yes, it is.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, certainly, I would certainly love to see more inclusion in this project, and particularly because it's in South LA. Not that I would not want the same for any other area of town. So without saying it, I would certainly like to see more than what we have here today. And of course, the real issue here and the main thing is that this is not about that. But for me, I just want you to know it's always about that. But as it relates to the qualifications here, certainly I would support the department's recommendation. I think Ms. McGlinchey is not here because she has nothing to add to the presentation of the engineering department.
I did call Ms. McGlinchey this morning, but she was not available, and then...
But my point is that having worked with her, I think that if there was something that she felt was necessary for us to know, she would be here. And I think that because she agrees with the report given by engineering, therefore they are one and the same report. But more important than that, I support the department's recommendation here because even as we look at the insinuation and the alleged presentation that was given earlier, it does not substantiate itself in terms of telling us that this company is not qualified to do the work, which is critically important here. Now, the other issue, the final issue, is the funding, the cost. Certainly, I think the citizens of Los Angeles likes it when we are able to do our job in a way that's cost-effective. So, yeah, if we look at that, that's also important. So having said both of those things, Mr. President, I support the recommendation of the department because of the Bureau, because I have not been told anything that distinguishes what we need to do on a routine basis in confirming a contractor to do this kind of work, up to the fact that it's best financially for the city as well for us to support this contracting. I mean, I couldn't imagine stepping out on a limb for more money for something that hasn't been substantiated to me in testimony. So clearly I support the recommendation of the Bureau of Engineering.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Davis. I'll take that as your motion. Let me just say that I think we've established that there's no dispute about JR Pipeline's qualifications to do this work. To me, the question is, were the bid documents sufficient for them to be awarded the contract? And I did try to look at, and Mr. Westhoff's very familiar with the board and is always thoughtful and substantive with the points that you make, that he's made, although I don't see the rigid interpretation as warranted here. And because I wanted to give the rigid interpretation a shot, I asked the questions from contract administration and engineering separately to see if there's any kind of wavering in their ability to satisfy the bid requirements that are in the subject qualifications page, and neither of them wavered. For that reason, I do think that the responsible thing to do here is to go with the low bid. I do somewhat reject the fact that, Mr. Westhoff, that we always, maybe we're supposed to, but I feel like our board's a little different. We always go for the low bid. I know that we're required to go with the most responsible bid that's the low bid, but this board has never shied away from going with a second or third low bid if the legal requirements mandate it, or occasionally there are discretionary things that occur that will make us go with a second or third low bid that costs the city sometimes responsibly a bit more money. I just don't think this is that one. So I'm going to second Commissioner Davis's motion. Any objection? Okay. So on the voice vote, that'll be the order. Any issue sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Mr. Westhoff, thank you, sir. Mr. Musi, thank you. Thank you to those that participated in the process. Mr. Mendoza, have we cleared the desk now?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned this morning. Thank you, everyone.